The van was still parked exactly where they left it. Keys in the ignition, maps spread open on the front seat, but the group it had carried, 6 students and a teacher, had vanished into the Oregon wilderness, leaving behind only silence and a string of unanswered questions. On October 17, 2008, Northview High School's history department organized a weekend educational trip to Fort Cascade National Reserve, a forested area nestled deep in the Cascade Range, known for its Civil War-era military ruins and remote trail networks. The group, led by Mr. Randall Ayers, a 43-year-old teacher with over 15 years of experience, left Portland in a rented white passenger van at 7:15 a.m. They were expected to return by Sunday evening. They never did. Weather on the morning of departure was stable, overcast, with intermittent fog rising along the I-84 corridor. The plan, according to school records, was simple: drive to the old fort site, camp 2 nights, and document key historic landmarks as part of a senior history project. Each student had been assigned a specific topic, and Randall carried a binder with maps, assignments, and a schedule of activities. Among the students were 2 pairs of siblings, the Marlowe twins, Jonah and Elise, both 17, Cassie James, a keen photographer, Luis Ortega, the group's unofficial navigator, and Devlin Cray, a quieter student with a known habit of journaling obsessively. None of them would return. By Monday morning, concerned parents began calling the school. The van had not reappeared. There had been no phone calls, no messages, not even a post on any of their social media accounts, highly unusual for a group of seniors in 2008. When the rental company confirmed the van had never been checked back in, school officials contacted state authorities. A search and rescue operation was launched within hours. The van was located the next day, parked at the edge of a disused Forest Service road in the northwestern quadrant of the Fort Cascade Park boundary. Not part of the official route filed in Randall's itinerary, the vehicle showed no signs of forced entry. Food wrappers, water bottles, hiking boots and gear were all accounted for. Even the laminated activity schedule was on the dashboard, with Saturday hike to Ridge Base, picnic, photos circled in red marker. But the trail cameras placed near the park's main entrances showed nothing. None of the group had triggered a recording. There were no phone pings after Friday at 10:34 about them. A single outgoing text message from Elise Marlowe, reading only "weird spot." Randall says trails blocked, going around. The signal cut off shortly after. Investigators confirmed that from that location, deep in the Cascade interior, cell reception was unlikely to resume. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Helicopters scanned the terrain. Rangers on horseback combed narrow forest ridgelines. For weeks, then months, teams worked with grid searches, checking every cave system, logging trail, and remote outbuilding within a 20-mile radius. No footprints, no broken branches, no signs of camping, no personal effects. It was as if the group had simply stepped off the map. Randall Ayers, a meticulous planner with no criminal record or history of mental health issues, became the center of a growing theory that he had orchestrated an unsanctioned detour. But there was no evidence he intended harm. He had a clean background, glowing school reviews, and was known for his cautious temperament. Still, without explanation or witnesses, the community grew suspicious. Rumors ranged from a bear attack to cult involvement. Some insisted they had run away, but none of their bank accounts were touched. Their identification, including wallets and Randall's license, remained untouched in the van. For 12 years, the case went cold. Then on May 28, 2020, a group of spelunkers mapping abandoned cave systems in the Glenpine Basin, roughly 16 miles east of the last known van location, reported an unusual find to local authorities. Deep within a narrow limestone shaft known as Cave 21B, a Polaroid camera was found lodged between rocks. Still intact, its strap knotted around a tree root that had grown through the cave ceiling. The model, a Sun 600 LMS, had faded initials scratched into its back. CJ, Cassie James. When technicians developed the film cartridge, only one photograph had survived. The image was blurry, water-damaged, and overexposed in its lower half. But the top portion was clear, 6 figures silhouetted in a cave opening. The timestamp read OCT 1808. One figure, likely Randall, stood holding what appeared to be a hand-drawn map. Another seemed to be pointing towards something outside the frame. Behind them, barely visible, was what looked like a carved wall. Park officials confirmed no known cave matching that interior existed in any mapped portion of the Cascade Range. Authorities reclassified the case from missing persons to unresolved disappearance with new physical evidence. Search teams returned to the area. Cave 21B was exhaustively examined. No additional traces were found. The camera appeared to have been dropped or wedged from above, possibly from a narrow gap that led to an upper chamber still blocked by fallen rock. Was the image taken by the students before they vanished? If so, why had it remained hidden for 12 years? And why was Cassie's camera there when her belongings were supposed to be in the van? The investigation had a new lead. But no new names, no new bodies, no answers, only a Polaroid and 6 shadows on the cave wall. 2 days after the camera's discovery, the Oregon State Bureau of Investigation, OSBI, dispatched a specialist forensic team to Glen Pine Basin. Cave 21B was sealed off, and a week-long excavation began to assess the blocked upper chamber. The theory was clear. If the camera had fallen from a fissure above, there might be more to uncover. Remnants, personal effects, even human remains. But the shaft was too narrow. Debris was unstable. Every attempt to clear the obstruction risked a collapse. So the excavation was halted. Instead, they introduced a remote probe camera through a micro-drilled channel. The footage revealed something unexpected. A second chamber, roughly 6 feet high, 12 feet wide. Inside, an irregular pattern of rocks, as if stacked intentionally. And in the center, a length of nylon rope, looped and threaded through a rusted metal ring mounted into the wall. No remains, no backpacks. But a single item lay half buried under sediment, a spiral-bound field notebook, soaked and barely legible. The cover bore the initials DC, Devlin Cray. The OSBI lab recovered fragments from within. Most were too water-damaged to decipher, but a handful of lines were preserved. Saturday night, still no signal. Randall says we're close, but I think we've gone way off. Cassie thinks she saw a marker etched into a boulder, not on the map. Jonah's been acting weird, keeps looking behind him like he hears things. We're staying in the cave tonight. Randall says it's safer than hiking back in the dark. Luis doesn't trust him anymore. The notebook abruptly ended after that final line. Investigators now had confirmation the group had reached a previously undocumented location. But what raised more concern was the internal tension noted in Devlin's writing. Luis, the student known for his navigation skills, no longer trusting their teacher. Jonah, reportedly disoriented, and a cave chosen as shelter, with no known exit route recorded. Detectives re-examined the original witness statements from 2008, particularly the family's last interactions. One detail resurfaced. Luis had left a voicemail to his sister around 9:45 a.m. on the morning of the disappearance. It had never been publicized. In it, he sounded calm, but ended with an offhand comment. "Tell Dad not to worry. Randall says we're just taking the scenic route." The phrase stood out now. A scenic route that didn't match any authorized trail. Investigators began to explore a possibility previously dismissed, that Randall Ayers had intentionally deviated from the planned itinerary, not due to accident, but by design. a former student, now an adult, came forward following the renewed media attention. Her name was Hannah Bell. She had graduated in 2007, 1 year before the disappearance. She claimed Randall had made a similar detour on a smaller hike that spring. According to her, Randall took 3 students off trail near a boundary marker and led them through an area he called the Old Ridge Walk. She remembered the phrase clearly because Randall had mentioned it multiple times in class as a forgotten path with history. No such path was listed in Fort Cascade's official trail records. This prompted a dive into Randall Ayers' personal effects, seized in 2008 but never thoroughly reanalyzed. Stored at the Portland Public Schools archive facility, a locked metal filing cabinet was opened by investigators. Inside were lesson plans, textbooks, and a single folder marked FCNP ALT. Within, hand-drawn trail diagrams, photocopies of Civil War-era survey maps, and a notation repeated on several pages. Site 9R, not on official charting. Last recorded 1911. Confirm location. Under a transparency overlay, one of Randall's sketches appeared to trace a path along a ridgeline that terminated near the Glen Pine cave systems, roughly where Cave 21B sits today. The implications were clear. Randall had known about the cave system. He had studied obscure military documents and planned an unauthorized exploration, possibly without informing the school. His intentions remained uncertain, but his decision placed 6 students in a hazardous, unmapped zone. Why? Theories emerged. Some suggested obsession, that Randall believed he'd found a lost wartime fortification. Others questioned whether he had simply gotten lost and tried to cover his mistake by continuing forward. But then came the second twist. One of the Marlowe twins' younger brothers, Nate, now 22, contacted authorities with the disturbing discovery of his own. He had found, among family keepsakes, an undeveloped roll of 35mm film inside a weathered envelope labeled Cassie F. It had been misfiled in a box of childhood photos. The envelope had no postmark, but inside was a folded sheet of ruled notebook paper, written in rushed handwriting. "They're not following anymore. Luis went back alone. Don't know if he made it. If anyone finds this, we didn't mean to get lost. He told us it was mapped." The handwriting matched samples from Cassie James's schoolwork. The film was sent to Osby's forensics lab. Out of the 24 frames, 19 were blank or overexposed. The remaining 5 showed a sequence. A dim tunnel entrance, a rock wall with faint markings, a group huddled by a campfire, a wide-angle shot of a crevasse, and in the final frame, Randall Ayers, eyes reflecting the flash, holding a compass, pointing away from the group. It was time-stamped October 18th, 11:26 p.m., the time the group was presumed to have gone missing. Authorities now had mounting evidence of a deliberate detour. Questions shifted. Why had Randall concealed this alternative trail? What happened after the last photo? Where was Luis, the only one believed to have attempted return? As the cave investigation paused due to safety risks, OSBI released a preliminary report with a revised conclusion. The group had entered an uncharted area, misled by Randall Ayers. Tensions had risen. A possible split occurred. One or more students may have attempted to return, but the group had never been officially located. Until that moment, no bodies had been found. No verified sightings, but 12 years later, evidence was resurfacing or slowly, deliberately, from the shadows of a forgotten cave. And then, in late August 2020, a hiker stumbled across something new. A shoe, half buried in moss, size 10, custom orthotic insole. It matched a known prescription for Jonah Marlowe, found 2.3 miles east of Cave 21B. Near a dry creek bed once used as a civilian conservation corps path, decommissioned in 1949. The direction he was heading, back toward the van. The shoe, worn but intact, was confirmed through forensic comparison. Jonah Marlowe's. The orthotic insole bore a unique heel stamp from a podiatrist in Portland. For investigators, this was the first physical trace of any individual from the group beyond the Polaroid and notebook. It was found along a collapsed forest path, once part of a civilian Conservation Corps access route used between 1936 and 1949, now overtaken by growth and erosion. What was striking was its location, due east of Cave 21B, and several miles away from the van, as if someone had indeed tried to return but diverted, disoriented, or forced off route. Search teams returned to the Glen Pine perimeter with renewed urgency. Canine units were deployed again, but 12 years of soil shift, wildlife, and climate exposure had stripped the terrain of scent. Investigators began rechecking old ranger cabin logs, hoping to find missed notations or overlooked alerts. One stood out. On October 21st, 2008, 3 days after the group's last known contact, a seasonal ranger working in the South Ridge sector, 18 miles south of the cave site, logged an unusual note in the daily ledger. Heard shouting, female voice, approx. 5:40 MB, northeast quadrant. Brief, then silence, no follow-up. It had never been flagged. The ranger, now retired, was located and re-interviewed. He recalled the moment clearly, said it sounded like someone calling for help once, maybe twice, then nothing. At the time, no connection to a missing group had been made. The shout had come from a part of the reserve with dense vertical drop-offs and scattered ravines, and it was dismissed as likely hikers or wildlife. But now, with Cassie James's letter and Devlin Cray's notes indicating a breakdown in group cohesion, investigators reclassified the South Ridge report as a possible final vocal trace. And then came the file from the school board, misfiled in an inactive directory, only uncovered during a routine audit of historic trip approvals, a scanned form, FCNP Excursion Addendum, Site 9R, unofficial, signed by Randall Ayers, dated September 2008. This form had never been reviewed or processed by the district. It was supposed to include a second page, one detailing emergency protocols and alternate routes, but that page was missing. The presence of the form proved something else. Randall had intended to deviate from the official path. He had disclosed, at least on paper, a Site 9RI, though no formal geographic designation of such a location existed in federal park records. Either he'd invented it from Civil War-era documents or rediscovered an unlogged structure. Investigators now viewed Randall not simply as a misguided leader, but possibly as someone acting with purpose, even secrecy. A former historian at the University of Oregon, Dr. Miles Eckert, was consulted. He confirmed that several militia camps from the Civil War era were rumored to have existed in the Fort Cascade region, but had never been formally mapped. Some were believed to be hidden in strategic natural formations, such as caves, meant for storing munitions or supplies, later sealed or lost to time. Could Randall have believed he'd found one? This theory explained some of the cryptic notations in his folder. One sketch in particular showed a sequence of shapes, more labeled stone marker patterns, verified. Eckert noted these symbols appeared in early Union military encryption for wayfinding, each representing different directions in encoded maps. But why involve students? Randall had never published academic work. If he was chasing a historical lead, he hadn't shared it with colleagues. No one at Northview High had seen his folder or heard him speak of Site 9R prior to the trip. Still, motives aside, the trail had grown more troubling. The shoe wasn't the only thing found near the ravine. 15 meters from the creek bed, tucked beneath a thicket of collapsed fern and birch, a decomposing cloth object was discovered, faded, brittle, a backpack, child-sized. Within it, a rusted metal lunch tin, a high school yearbook with waterlogged pages, and a laminated flashcard marked U.S. History, Fort Cascade Defenses. The name scribbled in the corner, Elise Marlowe. No human remains were found near the site. The pack appeared to have been left, perhaps dropped, perhaps abandoned, but it solidified the emerging pattern. The group had fractured. Someone, at least one student, had tried to find a way back. Investigators now considered a grim possibility that some had died within the cave, while others had tried to escape with unknown fates. Search logistics intensified. Forensic teams focused on drainage systems, rock formations, and watercourses that could have been used or fallen into. Bones in such conditions decompose fast. Personal items are often a better indicator. Then, in September 2020, OSB received a tip from a retired cartographer. While scanning archival geological surveys of the Cascade foothills for unrelated research, he noticed an anomaly. A hand-annotated map from 1954 with a small triangle labeled OBS-PNT, Observation Point. It sat near the Glenpine Cave network, but was not present on any federal topo maps post-1970. That point, when plotted, aligned nearly perfectly with the direction the final Polaroid photo had been taken. Investigators believed the group had reached that high point, likely the cave's mouth, and photographed their surroundings before moving deeper in. With no clear exit, they may have attempted a loop trail, perhaps in the dark, misjudging terrain, rain conditions, or simply panicking. Some could have tried to follow water downhill. Others may have stayed waiting. And then came the third discovery. Inside a hunter's weather shelter, 3 miles north of the cave and largely forgotten, an old Polaroid sat wedged under a metal drawer. It had clearly been there for years. The image showed a hand outstretched, covered in dirt. On the back, a message scrawled in pen. "We made it to the ridge. Elise can't walk. Luis said he saw lights downriver. If someone finds this, don't blame Randall. He thought it was safe." It was dated in faint ink, October 19th, 2008. Handwriting analysts confirmed the note matched Jonah Marlowe's signature from school essays. Now, finally, there was a timeline. They had survived at least 2 days past the initial disappearance. They had moved. They had tried. But 12 years later, no bodies had ever been found. No full remains, no final confirmation, only a camera, a notebook, a shoe, and a message written by a boy who never made it home. By October 2020, the investigation into the Northview High disappearance had entered its most active phase since the week they vanished in 2008. With multiple personal items recovered across 3 separate sectors of the Fort Cascade region, authorities now worked from a revised reconstruction of events. It was now believed that the group split into at least 2 factions, one possibly led by Randall Ayres, who continued exploring the undocumented cave system, the other consisting of students attempting to retrace their path toward the van. But the terrain, weather, and inexperience likely turned that decision fatal. OSBI's Geographic Profiling Unit compiled all location data: the van, Cave 21B, the site of Jonah's shoe, Elise's backpack, and the hunter's shelter containing the final message. The pattern suggested a counterclockwise movement away from the cave, chaotic, fragmented, but consistent with a group in distress navigating by instinct. In November, searchers focusing on dry creek beds near the Glenpine Basin found a degraded nylon tent partially buried by debris. Inside were broken zippers, a single flashlight, and a rusted wristwatch engraved with the initials L.O. Luis Ortega. It was the last new object ever recovered. No human remains were found, and the search was eventually suspended after winter conditions returned. With all leads exhausted, OSB delivered its final report in January 2021. It concluded that Randall Ayres, in pursuit of undocumented Civil War ruins, led the group off established routes toward what he believed was a hidden Union site. Records and recovered sketches supported this theory. When weather or topographical conditions worsened, the group's cohesion deteriorated. Disagreements, including at least one documented mistrust by Luis, likely led to a split. One or more students attempted to return, others remained behind. Communications failed, visibility dropped, panic took hold. The official classification: death by exposure and misadventure, no foul play suspected, but the conclusion satisfied few. The families of the missing released a joint statement. No declaration, no document, no theory will replace what we lost. Our children were not thrill seekers. They followed someone they trusted. And the system that should have protected them failed. Northview High School permanently discontinued overnight outdoor excursions after the 2008 case. Randall Ayres was posthumously removed from the Oregon Board of Education's teaching register. His personnel record now includes a final notation: subject of unapproved off-route expedition, resulting in 6 missing minors. The cave where the Polaroid camera was discovered, now designated as Cave 21BR in state files, has been sealed with steel barriers. Access is prohibited. Cassie James' family donated the recovered Polaroids to a local museum, along with Devlin Cray's notebook fragments. The final exhibit bears no photos of the group, only a wall-sized blow-up of the blurry cave photo, the 6 silhouetted figures staring outward into fog, with one caption: last known image, October 18, 2008. Fort Cascade Reserve. In an interview recorded but never aired, a former Northview teacher who had worked with Randall for over a decade said quietly, "He loved history, but I think at some point he stopped seeing the difference between discovering the past and becoming part of it. 12 years, 6 names, no graves, only silence where answers should be. And a camera that somehow found its way out when they never did."